know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio. Flexing, she loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Rutgers fans, welcome to another episode of Night Watch. I am your host, Larry K., and for once in weeks and weeks, we are coming to you with a Rutgers basketball victory. It's a victory Monday for the Scarlet Knights, beating UCLA in their first trip to Piscataway, 75-68. Coach Cronin for UCLA was ripping into his team a few days ago and got himself ejected from a game and all this craziness, but can we at least say that the guy takes dressing very seriously? Like the tie, the suit, it matched the uniforms. Can we get back to that? I mean, I know that there's these endorsement deals or whatever where the coaches ever since 2020 can wear casual gear, but you know, I like how the NHL does it. I like a coach wearing a suit, you know, dressing like the grown man. I just thought that was cool, but let's move that out of the way. Rutgers comes away with a much desperately needed victory. I mean, if you don't get the win here, the end of a 3-game homestand where the first 2 you failed to get a win and it was pretty decisive. Dylan Harper comes back. You can almost tell he lost some weight there just in his face. Must have been through a brutal illness. Welcome sight to have Dylan back in the fold. He's the best player on the team. He's one of the best players in college basketball, in my opinion. Great kid who does love Rutgers, so getting him back is huge for this team. And I think we really struggled without him. We've talked about whether we would have won it with him at full strength or not, and I don't think that, you know, it was that decisive given how bad the entire team was in those games. But we get Dylan back today. He obviously doesn't do it himself, but it's a great addition, and it's just something the defense has to account for, and we win the game. One of the things I can say at the outset is, you know, and this has been indicative of whether we win or lose for most of this season, and I think we kind of knew it would be, and there have been fans and people who had raised the concern that, you know, is this team going to defend the way they need to defend to be able to be a complete team on both sides of the floor? Or is this going to be more of an AAU type team that wants to score points and it doesn't have as much interest on the defensive side of the floor? And I think, you know, aside from the offensive woes with the, you know, the rotation and the offensive philosophy and setting guys up for success and all of those things which matter, one of the biggest things in our losses has been the inability to defend. And I've been somebody who's been an outspoken, you know, voice saying, well, you went all in the portal and you went all in with players who are offensive minded, who have offensive skill sets. You're going to need to play guys who can play offensive ball, and you might need to win some high scoring games. And that might be how your team is able to function. Well, on Night Watch, one of the things we do is we keep it 100% real. I don't cling to narratives if I'm wrong about them. I still think there's some merit in the fact that you have a bunch of offensive-minded guys, and they're never going to be, you know, an elite defensive team per se like we've had in previous Pikel years. And you might need to win some games by, you know, doubling down on your offensive prowess. But I don't know how true that's been with this team, as the games that we've seen a little now. Last game, obviously, lower scoring affair against Purdue, and we still couldn't do anything on offense. So, you know, take that with how you want. But when the team plays with intensity on the defensive side of the ball, and when guys are giving maximum effort on the boards and on the defensive side of the ball, is when this team has gotten their best results. Despite the fact that it was built, you know, as an offensive juggernaut, despite the fact that most of the guys might struggle on the defensive side, but supposedly have high output on the offensive side, this team still continues. When you look at the stats, you know, rebounding is a huge part of whether this team succeeds or not. And it's really rebounding on the defensive side of the ball. If the other team is getting second and third chance shots over and over again, we struggle. And the only time a team didn't get third chance shots was because they were draining everything. And I think that was Wisconsin. There wasn't a ton of extra rebounds. It was because they were just draining everything on the first try. But the opposing team's percentages and our rebounding are really highly indicative of whether we win a game. Another thing is our turnovers. Turnovers have been huge. That's the offensive side of the ball. But, we not only have not played great on the defensive side of the ball, but on the offensive side of the ball, we've been sloppy. And here's what I saw today. First of all, and this is where I was going with this. First of all, on the defensive side of the ball, I saw very good intensity, good effort. I saw guys who knew where they were supposed to be, guys who knew if you switch off or if you help, you know where your guy is. You get back to him in time. You close out as best you can. I saw a lot of that on the defensive side of the ball. And then on the offensive side of the floor, what I saw was, we had run this quite a bit with Cliff when he was here. And by the way, shout out to Miles Johnson in the house with the UCLA shirt. A Rutgers alum undergrad, went to UCLA, obviously a California kid, great young man, great to see him in the building. I still have such an affinity for that, era of kids under Pike. Great kid all around, and just great to see him there. A little bit of a troll job by UCLA before the game saying, he's our guy. Fun stuff for everybody. And while we're speaking about Miles in the crowd, props to the crowd today. You guys were loud. I could hear you on TV. I didn't make it out to the game. Monday, it's tough with a lot of other things going on. But you guys were really loud. And it was clear that when the team gave you something to cheer for, you certainly cheered and you got loud and you got into it. And I think it did play a role in the way the game was called. I think it played a role in how UCLA played and their offensive or ability or lack thereof. And it definitely played a part in the win. So props to the Rack, and it was cool to see Miles there. But I saw a concerted effort to run, something on the offensive side of the ball. Somerville was clearly trying to get up there, set that high screen, as we'd seen with Cliff so often, and then roll. He was making a conscious effort to roll to the basket and get there. And there were a few times where he was open in the lane and the ball could have gotten to him, but it didn't. A few other times UCLA was in the vicinity. But it looked like we were actually trying to have a concerted effort on offense to move without the ball and to move the ball. And whenever we play with defensive intensity and then on the offensive side of the ball, move the ball and move without the ball, we tend to do better in the games than when we're not giving that type of effort on defense, we're slow-footed on defense, and we're stagnant on offense. And that's not rocket science, and that's not anything new, but it's plagued this team, especially this season, over and over again. And there's been debates about, do we need to sacrifice scoring, for effort guys on defense, or do we need to sacrifice defense and just win, in shootouts up to the 90, range and just let guys let it loose and put them in position to succeed? Well, Pike, it seems, has doubled down, and this is definitely true with Dylan Grant, who, by the way, it's borderline malpractice that Dylan Grant hadn't been playing earlier. He's saying, I want guys who could play gritty basketball. I want guys who are going to play defense. And even my stars who are good on offense are going to have to get out there, get their hands dirty, and play defense. And that has been the winning formula. Contrary to what I was saying, which was, hey, roll with Hayes all game, roll with Acuff all game and just go out there and score. Pike said, no, I want my defensive intensity that's going to feed the offensive side of the ball. I don't know that we won necessarily because of our offense, although 75 points for Rutgers is a good showing, and I'll get into the stats in a minute. But I think, our defense and the fact that UCLA didn't really have a great day. I mean, UCLA, let's face it, this is a fourth loss in a row. West Coast team coming to Piscataway, being at the Rack, Jersey Mike's for the first time, and they kind of look like we look sometimes on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, early on, they looked like they were running things. They were a little fluid. Very early on, they were getting some good looks. They were sinking some good looks. But as the game went on, UCLA was kind of getting stagnant themselves, couldn't drain a lot of things, and were not particularly effective on the offensive glass, and that cost them in the end. So let's dive into some stats to get a real look at what decided this game. Field goal percentage, very close. Rutgers, 46.2%. UCLA, 42.4%. That, in previous games when our defense has not been good, you've seen teams get over 50% which is tough to win against. And we have been very low in the 30% in some of these recent games. So getting our efficiency up even just a little bit from the field and defending enough, or actually having some luck with the other team not being on their game, is a huge help in and of itself. 3-pointers, both teams hit 6 3-pointers. Again, very close. Rutgers 6 of 20 for a 30% clip. UCLA 16 of 19 for a 31.6% clip. Free throws, Rutgers shooting 67.7%, UCLA shooting 80%. Free throws continue to be a problem. We sank some at the end to seal it, which was great because we've seen the reverse of that happen in previous games. But 67% is still not good enough when you're getting opportunities because you're creating plays that lead to contact and fouls. You've got to convert. And Rutgers has got to do a better job at the line. The difference was we hit 21 free throws. We shot 31 free throws, and UCLA only shot 15 free throws. Again, good defensive positioning. Again, hostile environment. The refs, I thought, called the game a good game and maybe one a little favorable to Rutgers in spots. And it's something else we haven't seen much of, right? I mean, all these things matter in a game. And we've seen other games where it looked like our guys were trying to create a ton of contact and we're getting none. And we weren't getting any calls, and the other team was getting a bunch of calls. So that matters as well. Total rebounds, and this is a big story, and it will continue to be a big story. And when I get to the individual stats, it's going to be a big story on the individual stats too. And it's a trend, which is no surprise, not rocket science. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But when the rebounding's better, we tend to do better in the game. And when certain players are forces on the boards, we tend to do better in the game. Defensive rebounds, total rebounds 37-29. Rutgers comes away with the edge in total rebounds, and where it was, I think, was really important. Offensive rebounds 11-10 in Rutgers' favor, but defensive rebounds, this is where the disparity comes in. Defensive rebounds 26 for Rutgers, 19 for UCLA. And that is a huge story. You have seen teams time and time again getting second chance and third chance points against us. And in this game, it goes along with the overall defensive performance today was the defensive glass. Rutgers prevented those second and third chances, which is why we edged them by 1 rebound on the offensive side, held them to 10, and our defensive rebounds were 26-19. That is such a key, not only to the game, but on a more minute level on the defensive side of the ball. Rebounding matters too. 7 blocks for Rutgers. 7 blocks. 2 for UCLA. You see these stats are bearing out a much better defensive performance. And that's part of the reason the team was able to feed off that energy and do well. 10 turnovers for Rutgers, only 9 for UCLA. Still losing the turnover battle. 17 fouls for Rutgers, 23 for UCLA. And let's get into some individual stats now. And I was just referencing the boards and how good we were doing on the boards. And if you look at Ace Bailey's stat line, this has been an ongoing trend as well, right? Ace Bailey, when he's a force down low on the boards, and I'd love to see him even continue to be a force down low on offensively, getting to the rim a little bit more. But when Ace Bailey is crashing the boards and doing it effectively, Rutgers has overall had a better outing, and that's still true today. Ace Bailey with 10 rebounds. 10 rebounds. A double-double with 10 rebounds, 20 points. Led the team with 20 points. I still thought there were a shot or two with Ace that were maybe ill-advised, a pass or two with Ace that was ill-advised, but the 3 down the stretch at the end of the game was absolutely huge. He's a guy who can hit a 3 like that right in the face of a defender, and you can count on him to do that sometimes, and so that was good. That's the type of plays you can get from Ace, especially when he's feeling it. That was huge. Dylan Harper, back to his old self, 18 points, 4 assists, 4 rebounds. There were times, once again, where Dylan had to just take that rock gracefully and smoothly, get to the hole, and he did it through, driving the lane. It was great to see. We're going to need that more and more. It's evident that this team, relies, at least somewhat, on Dillon being able to do that a few times a game at least to keep us where we need to be offensively, and he was back to his old self. I haven't seen that in a couple weeks. He was able to do that. Martini, there's something about him. If Pike is still sticking with Martini this much, I know there's a lot of people out there saying he just can't play in the Big Ten, but, it's not like he did much today. 15 minutes, 4 points, 1 rebound. He did hit a 3, and the crowd went nuts, and it seemed like he was excited that he hit the 3. But then after that, kind of took one shot before that missed. Another shot went in and out, hit a foul shot. Pike believes in him for some reason, so he must be doing something in practice. He must be doing something. I mean, he was a good player before he got here for all intents and purposes. He was part of a Princeton team that made a run to the Sweet 16, so he can't be completely bad. Pike's sticking with him a little bit, giving him a little bit of run, but overall, the defensive vulnerability with him and the lack of ability to consistently drain threes is haunting him. But that's where Dylan Grant comes in, playing the 4 for parts of this game with Somerville at the 5. And the grit and intensity of Grant, I just don't understand why he wasn't playing earlier. He has that budding, energy of a little bit of a Mawat Mag in that sense. I don't know about the skill set being exactly the same, but he's got some of those budding, energies and the way he fits into the team. I'm surprised he didn't play earlier because, he's a real force and kind of one of what Pike says and other guys call a glue guy in a lot of ways. And having him in there makes a difference. And now since the revelation has come that he can get meaningful minutes and change the energy of the team and the complexion of the team, he's been in there. And I think it was another he played 24 minutes. He's playing starter minutes at this point. So probably should have given him a run earlier, quite frankly. Dylan, I went over already. Acuff, 15 minutes on par, a little more than Martini, a little more than Ogbole. And Ogbole, by the way, again, the intensity was contagious because Ogbole comes up on a rebound, snatches it out of the hand of the UCLA player and puts it back in. That's the type of stuff that's been happening to Rutgers all year because we've just been lacking in matching other teams' efforts. And this game was the opposite. Ogbole, great example of that. But Acuff playing about on par with Ogbole and look, hits some nice shots, creates some nice things on offense. He can still make a beautiful move to the basket, every now and then and really beat a guy off the dribble. And, he's versatile with the basketball in his hands, but Pike has made the decision, contrary to what I was saying. And, hey, kudos to Pike. He was right here, at least for this game. Acuff is sometimes a step slow on defense. And so he got his minutes, and it was meaningful minutes, and he helped for sure. But the defense was paramount, and it's probably always going to be with this coach. And so the minutes were allotted that way. Jeremiah Williams, much better game today. 11 points, a rebound, and an assist, 26 minutes played. He was much more effective scoring with the basketball. And we've been saying, and I don't think it's ever going to be one consistent guy. A lot of people have been saying, where are we going to find that third scorer? And it's an ongoing project to find it. I don't think you're ever going to have a consistent third scorer. A lot of people said, it's going to be Acuff. It's got to be Williams. Who's going to play that role? And I don't think anybody's going to hold down that role and solidify it for this season. I think it's going to be every game somebody different. The thing is, somebody's got to do that, right? Whether it's Acuff, whether it's Somerville, whether it's Davis, and he's done it before, whether it's Williams, somebody's got to take that third scorer role and get into those double digits for us to have success. And this time it was Williams. And again, the defensive intensity was good from Williams, and that's why he was playing. Defensive intensity from Somerville. I mean, there was a play where he's on his man, he's alert, and there was a pass to get it down low, and Somerville sticks his hand right in there and rejects the pass, and it's a turnover. We take it the other way. I mean, his intensity was good. I thought he was trying to run consciously some things on the offensive side of the ball, like I said, the high screen and roll. And on the defensive side of the ball, he was locked in, and that's a big part of the reason we succeeded. But don't count out the fact that UCLA is on a skid right now. They're not playing the best basketball. Their shooting percentage was much lower than a lot of other teams. Now, part of that has to do with our defense. Part of that has to do with the crowd. And part of that has to do with, just them not being a great team right now in the way that they're playing. So it's excellent to get a win because the door is not shut literally, mathematically, actually. And I don't know that the door would have even been shut mathematically had we lost. But, had we lost, you lose 3 games in a row at home. I mean, at that point, there's not much else you can do. So winning the game is great because it keeps us somewhat alive. What is disappointing, and everybody knows this, is, you have a 3-game homestand. It's unfortunate that our best player gets sick, can't make the trip to Indiana, can't be 100% in the 2 first games of this homestand. And, now you win a game against UCLA, who's struggling, but you still are looking at a really rough and long road and a tough road to try to get to where you want to go this season. And that's unfortunate, right? So we kind of pick up the pieces now. We go on the road for this little road trip. We are at Nebraska Thursday at 9 p.m. We are at Penn State after that on Monday the 20th. And then we come home. We don't really come home because we're not at Jersey Mike's on the 25th of January. We're at MSG, and I think it's technically a home game. I'm not even sure. I don't know if it's neutral site or technically a home game, but number 12 Michigan State is coming to MSG, which the crowd will be a home crowd, but it's still not the same as playing at Jersey Mike's. And this team struggles away from Jersey Mike's, whether that's a neutral court or whether that's on the road. So we're not coming back to Jersey Mike's until February 1st. And that is Michigan visiting. So you continue to have tests against Big Ten teams. Now, can this team turn it on and turn it up? I wonder. So let's first of all talk about the fact that I think at this point, Rutgers needs to win 11 games to get into the tournament. 11 more, right? Because I think you really need 20. And that's, I think you need 20. And with the losses you have, the bad losses, you don't have any room for error. I don't think this is a team that gets in with 19. It's definitely not a team that gets in with 18. The committees have shown that they don't put much stock in the conference tournament, so I don't think we should be relying like we erroneously did a few years ago after the Minnesota loss. We erroneously thought, I think it was Michigan, that we beat Michigan in the Big Ten tournament and we're a shoo-in. We weren't. I don't think that the committees are going to give enough, as much emphasis unless you make a magical run, you get to the championship game. I don't know if that's going to matter, especially with Rutgers' resume. The Princeton neutral site loss, the Kennesaw State road loss. These are rough losses. And so you got to make up for that by having a really good record in conference. And it's going to take 20 wins on the season, I think, to get us where we want to go. And so, I think you need to win. They used to say, you need, I think you probably need 13 wins. And my math is correct. And they're 9-8 at this point. That's 11 more wins. They're 2-3 in the Big Ten. I think you need to get to 20 wins, and it sounds crazy. I think most people would say 12 wins in conference might get you there, but I don't think so. I think they're going to have to win, and it's going to depend how it all shakes out and how everything's looking at the end of the year. And this could be a premature, pointless conversation because let's face it, UCLA is not playing great basketball right now. Didn't have a great day shooting or moving the ball. Didn't do a lot of things I loved. So I don't know that beating UCLA at home is indicative of us being able to get back on our feet and back in this thing. I don't think we're in this thing yet. I think you're going to have to go out and string 2, 3, 4 wins together. in a row to really be back in this thing realistically. Now, yeah, can you go out there, beat Nebraska, drop one to Penn State in a revenge game, beat Michigan State at home at a quote-unquote neutral site, which the committee might count as a home game, which isn't really fair, but whatever. Go out to North. I mean, could you drop one of those games? Could you drop to Michigan State, but beat Penn on the road, beat Nebraska? I mean, yeah, you could afford to drop one game in the next 4 and still be in contention. But you want to bank your ability to lose. You've probably really only got, because of how brutal those losses were, you've probably only got a few more losses to absorb here. And you'd want them to kind of be reserved for when you really have an off night. You're going to want to string some wins together here. And it starts with this road trip. And, it's not going to be an easy task. It's not going to be an easy task at all. They've put themselves in this hole, and I really think they got to get a bunch more wins now. Can they do it? Yes. But in order to do it, I think what's going to need to happen for this team now is, if Pike has found, and Durkak, Durkak, who had been a high effort guy, but who failed to pass the ball enough last game. We had that incident we saw, wouldn't pass it, hit the jumper from half court. I'll say that in this game, and I know I'm kind of going back because I had forgotten to mention this, we had less takes to the rim that were just absolutely had no chance of succeeding. We had more takes that were more artfully executed that had a chance of actually succeeding. Durkak, for all the effort he's given us, and I don't know if there was an issue. Maybe I missed why he was not in the game, if there was an injury or something. But I like some of the stuff he's given us, but him not being in that game, there was a lot more. Sometimes it was more sound on offense and defense. It was not a lot of out of control play in that regard on the offensive side of the ball, and he's a decent defender, but sometimes he's at a position or beaten just like some of the other guys. So I say that to say that if Pike and Hayes, who is just a step slow on defense and struggles to create his own offense other than, shooting from the perimeter, but when he's not hitting from the perimeter, it's even more anemic with him. I'm sure these guys will get run again, especially Durkak. I'm sure he's going to get in the game again. But if Pike has settled on a rotation, and this was a rotation tonight that seemed to be constantly plugging guys, but a limited amount of guys. Constantly keeping them fresh, but a limited amount of guys. If he's now going to focus on defensive play, high intensity, high effort, these guys are going to give it to me, and actually moving around on offense and trying to find the right shot and taking the right shot. This team can this team can sustain that, they have a chance to now turn on some other gear and become almost this Cinderella team in the year 2025 after such a brutal opening to the season, and still salvage this thing. Do I think it's likely? I don't think it's likely, because we've seen efforts like this before with this team, where the defensive intensity is high, where they're crashing the boards like monsters, where Ace Bailey has an efficient game, or at least in raw numbers is one of the leading scorers and is a real factor, where he's a big factor on the boards, where everybody's engaged and locked in on defense, and everybody's moving the ball around and doing what they're supposed to do on offense. Only the next game to see it kind of completely fall off and go back to low effort, ISO ball, Harlem Globetrotter stuff, and fall off. Now, until this team can show me that this is who they now are on a consistent game in, game out basis, I can't say it's likely that they do this. What I can say is, as a fan, I'm certainly hoping that happens. I am extremely glad they won today. so that it gives us a chance to salvage the season, because it's January, and even though January seems like it drags on forever, it's not that late in January. So to be done with the season would be really disappointing. So I'm hoping for it. There's a chance now. But until this team strings together a few of those games where they are this team that we saw tonight, I don't know that it's likely yet. But if Pike's found something in this rotation, and if these guys are seeing the payoff ultimately now in the victory, maybe they can find a way to stay locked in like that and continue to bring this effort. The thing is, not every team is going to be struggling the way UCLA was struggling. Some teams are going to hit a lot more shots consistently as the game goes on. And Rutgers, until really the middle of the second half, still had that struggle where even if they were locked in defensively, or even if UCLA was struggling to hit shots, Rutgers was having a drought on the offensive side of the ball. That ended a little bit in the second half where they were moving it around, they were getting things to fall. But you're going to have to hit more of your free throws at a much higher percentage. You're going to have to keep up offensively and stay engaged defensively, even when the other team is going through a couple minutes of being on fire and draining everything. Even when you're on the road in a hostile environment and it's not going the way you want it to go, you're going to need to dig deep and find that grit and intensity on both sides of the ball, specifically the defensive side of the ball, and gut out some of these wins. And I haven't seen it from this group yet. But it can happen. And you hope that it does happen. And so it starts at Nebraska. And nothing is easy in this league. But the team has the talent that if they play this way, they can hang with any of these teams. They just haven't been able to do it. And UCLA isn't world beaters, especially right now. So I'm not getting too high. I'm not getting too low. You now found something in Grant that you found a couple games ago. This is the first game back with a healthy Dylan Harper, 100% healthy. This is the first game you've changed the rotation a bit and really found your guys to really give that defensive effort the way you want it. And the guys bought it. So I also can't be a naysayer and say that, this is all the same. This is a new iteration so far this season. We're on, our 5th, 6th iteration by now. And this one, like a couple other iterations in the past, looks promising. Can they maintain it? Can they keep it consistent? Like I said, there's going to be some variability. Like, who's that third scorer? It's going to be Acuff one game. It's going to be Somerville one. You'd hope it's Jeremiah Williams on a more consistent basis because of what he can do on both sides of the ball, but he's had rough games this year too. So it might not be him one game. You might need more out of Acuff one game. You might need more out of these guys. You might get Durkak back, and you might need one out of him. It's not going to stay consistent. Don't just think it's, these 7 guys is going to be the end of the season. If it is, great. But I still think there's going to be some variability. But as a unit, can this team, with these guys taking the bulk of the minutes and the guys you're leaning on initially, can they string wins together? Because they're going to have to start now. There's no margin for error. There's no more, you can't go on any more extended losing streaks. And it's hard because it's on the road, and this team traditionally is not good on the road. So can they come out of this road trip winning most of the games? Because you've got to try to get to 20 wins here. And that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough. You've got 15 games left, if my calculations are correct. 15 games left in the Big Ten. You got to go 11-4. So you have 4 games to lose. You can't drop 2 of them in the next couple weeks. You can drop one. Now, I'm not the authority on such things, but that's just how I'm feeling about it and how I think it's going to be. If I'm wrong, drop it in the comments. But I think you gotta kind of go 11-4. Let's see if they can. It's an encouraging game. Congratulations to all the fans that were in attendance, got to see that win. First ever, UCLA trip to Piscataway. Cool to be there. Cool to see the great, a gritty, memorable performance. Let's hope it continues. I'm glad everybody had a good time and we got a victory. You can't lose them all. It's like you can't win them all. You can't lose them all. It was a good shot to win a game. Big Ten's tough. Going on the road in the Big Ten's tough. Even if Rutgers is not at the top of the Big Ten standings right now, you still can't take us for granted. You come into the RAC, bad things are going to happen. It's a house of horrors for the rest of the Big Ten, and that's how we want to keep it, and that's how it should stay. But I'll be with you guys soon to talk more basketball. Make sure you tune into the other creators. I always listen to I have my rotation. I listen to the Night Report guys. I listen to Aaron Brightman. I listen to the Rutgers Rant. These are I can't wait till they drop their show so I can listen to it. So make sure you check them out. And if you guys have not done so yet and you listen to me or you've seen my face more than once or you've tuned in once or twice, just go do me a favor. Click that subscribe button on your way out. It'll keep you updated on new content that I have coming out. There are more things in the works, as I can consistently say. I'm doing so many different things and got so many balls in the air and irons in the fire that it's not always easy. But I try to bring you consistent content because you are out there helping to grow the channel and keeping your eyes locked right here to the Night Report, audio and YouTube versions. Remember, if you want to listen in the car, at work, whatever, any major podcast platform, search Night Watch Larry K. We are out there. And if you're out there in the audio world, stop by YouTube, Night Watch Larry K. Click that subscribe button. Let's get it to 1,000 subscribers. NFL playoffs are going on. College football is down to the championship. So let's keep it locked, man. And let's hope the basketball team can string some wins together and keep this thing interesting right down to the wire. For now, go Knights. Larry K is out.